My name is Olivia Cook, and I'm a doctoral fellow at the University of Louisville in the Neuroimaging Laboratory of Cognitive, Affective, and Motoric Processes. Today, I'm going to be discussing memory suppression and fear extinction related to emotional cues. So just to give you guys kind of a brief background, emotion and memory are extremely intertwined processes that constantly affect one another. In this study, we were particularly looking at fearful memories. Both animals and humans have shown an ability to reduce the influence of these fearful memories, but different research examines this ability as being either volitional memory suppression or an automatic fear extinction. But it's unclear if these two processes involve the same neural circuitry. It's also unclear what component of the memory is being reduced when suppressing or extinguishing the emotional memories. Is it the emotional content that is being diminished, or the contextual details being forgotten? Our research goal is to examine the neural associations or dissociations between memory suppression and fear extinction using fMRI. To validate this research question first, before taking it to the scanner, we collected preliminary behavioral data investigating suppression and extinction in the same individuals. We hope to determine which component of the memory was being reduced in each condition. So far, we have collected data from 24 participants, though the goal is to eventually have 50 participants total. Most of the participants were undergraduate students at the University of Louisville. All participants went through an initial training phase in which they had to learn 32 picture pairs. Half of the pairs were neutral human faces paired with neutral images, such as a boat on a lake or a rabbit. The other half were neutral human faces that were paired with a fearful scene, like a person pointing a gun or a forest fire. After the participants completely learned the picture pairs, they went through an experimental phase. Here, each neutral face was given one of 3 different color borders. Participants were told if they saw a face with a green border to think about the previously associated picture in as much detail as possible. This was our think condition. If the face had a red border, they were asked to keep the previously associated picture out of their mind. This is our no think condition, or the suppression. Finally, if the face had a gray border around it, they were asked to look at the face only, neither thinking nor suppressing. This was our extinction condition. Some faces weren't shown during this phase to act as our baseline. The next phase was showing participants the neutral faces and asking them to rate their immediate emotional response on a scale from 1 to 7, with 1 being very negative and 7 being very positive. I also apologize, my cat is making a lot of noise, so please ignore. Finally, participants were shown the neutral faces once more and were asked to recall if the previously paired picture was negative or neutral. The rating phase acted as our way to gauge the valence or the emotionality of the memory, and the recall was our ability to gauge their actual objective recall of the memory. First, let's look at the results from the emotional ratings. We found significant main effects of valence and condition, as well as significant interaction of condition by valence. Looking at the baseline condition, we can see that participants rated faces paired with the negative pictures significantly more negative than those paired with neutral images. This shows that fear conditioning did successfully occur. We can also see that when looking at only the negative trials, here in blue, the think condition was rated much more negatively than baseline, while the extinction condition was rated less negatively, or the images were closer to neutral. When looking at the results from the memory recall, we found a significant interaction of condition by valence. Pictures in the negative think condition were recalled with the highest accuracy at about 93%. There was a significant difference between this and both the negative baseline and negative no think condition, as you can see in the graph. The negative no think and extinction conditions didn't show any significant differences from baseline. From these results, we can see that the think condition corresponded to enhanced memory recall, which is what we would hope. The more we had a participant think about the picture pairs, the better they were at remembering them. The think condition also had successful fear conditioning, in which the neutral face became a conditioned stimulus for this negative response, in which the neutral face, or as seen by participants rating these neutral faces more negatively than baseline. Unfortunately, the no-think condition didn't differ from baseline in either the valence ratings or memory recall. This suggests memory suppression failed. There could be several reasons for this. For instance, the original experimental design included more picture pairs, but it made the experiment too long, so participants were unable to hold their focus until the end. With this shortened version we created, the memory task might be too easy now. It's possible that if we were to, I'm sorry.
No, that's fantastic.
It's possible that if we were to add a break period sometime after the memory training, rather than have all the phases back to back, it would stop the paired images from being quite so fresh in the participants' minds. Another possibility is that participants aren't successfully suppressing the paired image in the experimental phase. In the current study, participants are allowed to use their own strategies to stop thinking about the paired image. Perhaps it would be more beneficial to give the participants a strategy that has been shown to enhance suppression. This could minimize differences in participants' ability to suppress successfully. Finally, we see that the extinction condition did not alter participants' memory, but it did reduce the negative emotional component. This is evidence that extinction is not unlearning a memory. Our results give us insight into how extinction works, and hopefully going forward in this study, we can get a better understanding of memory suppression and the differences between these two processes. As mentioned earlier, the next step would be to take this research to the scanner to examine the neural correlates associated with memory suppression and fear extinction. I would like to thank my advisor, Dr. Brendan Depew, and everyone in our research lab, specifically Dr. Lindsay Knight. Without her, the study wouldn't be possible. I'd also like to thank my university and everyone who participated. And thank you all for being here today.
Thank you very much for that, Olivia. Let's see. So we have a question from Gaia. Gaia, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly, or I can ask on your behalf.
Yeah, sure. I was wondering, in the no-think condition, how do you make sure that people are not thinking about the picture? Because it sounds to me like the more you tell me, don't think about it, I'll be thinking about it.
That is one of the issues that I think we found when there was not that memory suppression component. And that's why I think that the participants were not successfully not thinking about the image. And really the only way to test whether they suppressed it successfully is our memory recall task. And I think we're showing that they're not. So the experiment probably should be tweaked to help the participants actually know how to suppress the image. So that's a very good point.
So I have a question, Olivia. First, I'd like to say, everybody feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A. We'll keep monitoring that. But I was just wondering, would you expect to see, what sorts of differences you might expect to see between negative and positive associations?
So with the difference between negative and positive, well, specifically in this study, you noticed that we typically just use negative to neutral. We don't look at these more positive aspects because we're looking at fear extinction. And I think that it would be really interesting to look specifically at the positive interactions, because I do think that specifically if I were to take this to, for instance, an anxious population, that there would be this increase in reactivity towards the negative compared to the positive. And I think that that would be a really cool interaction to study further, because in this experiment, we don't have that positive to compare it to. We only compare to neutral. But I would expect to see that the positive images would be less pronounced of responses. I'm sorry, my cat is destroying my office. I think that it would be less pronounced than the negative.
That definitely makes sense. It seems like a very nice framework for specifically probing the associations to negative stimuli across different disorders that might be more susceptible to that.
Yeah, that is definitely the hope for the future of this research.
Very cool. I think we've had a really